Hello, friends and enemies, heroes and villains, welcome to Epic Realms. Today's guest is a musician, author, and board game designer. His Kickstarter for the board game The Malice of Light Adventures is now running on Kickstarter. Brady J Sadler, welcome to Epic Realms. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Did I
Appreciate it.
pronounce all that right? Sometimes I mess
Yeah,
up pronunciations.
yeah, sounds great to me.
Awesome.
Usually people will call me Bradley or like some kind of different B name for some reason, but yeah, it's
I
pretty.
have to I have to admit that there were a few times in my own brain the Sadler with the Brady keeps throwing me off, and every once in a while
Yeah,
I want to say Bradley,
yeah,
but you might have looked at me, glanced down, and I looked down to make sure I was saying Brady instead of Bradley. So anybody that's watching the live stream will have caught that, but
nailed it.
nailed it. Uh, so oftentimes we have a certain kind of start and a certain thing we talk about, but I want to know when you found out that there was another Brady Sadler author, and was that after you started writing?
It was, yeah. So I had my very first novel I published, which was tied to my band that I talked about off air, Lauren Guard. That book, Evil Corruption, came out in 2012, and I remember I think it was like probably a few years after that because I had started designing board games after that came out. But when I wanted to like get a website up and like really promote my author brand, whenever I'd search for Brady Sadler, I kept coming up with this one book, this one guy, and it was some guy in New York, some marketer, and he had a book called Collaboration is King, which I forget when it came out, but that was like everywhere. If you search for Brady Sadler, that's all you would see. I was like, God. So I had to like put a J in my name, and that was my pin name now. But now it's funny because that you can't find much about that guy anymore. So it was only like a flash in the pan book that he put out.
Right. Did you
Then
have
he
to
changed my
backtrack and like I got to put this book out a second time and change the name on it, or
Yeah,
did
the
that
Eva
throw a
Corruption
loop in there?
still is the only book that's under Brady Sadler.
Okay.
Everything else I've written is all Brady J Sadler,
Okay.
but my game design name is still Brady Sadler, so it's a little confusing.
So it's still the same. I had no idea. You messaged me. You're like, it's in the author world. It's Brady J Sadler, not to be confused. And I was like, what other guy? What other? So I had to do a deep dive and try and find just so I knew what I was looking at, so I didn't get the two of you confused. And I was like, third page on Google, way down, and it's like, no, I, you're
I
you're
solved
you're
the
the only one.
non-existent
You're the only
problem.
one. uh, so I want to talk about your book and board games more later on here in a bit, but your new game was made with your brother. Have all of your board games been made with your brother? Only some of them? What is that kind of dynamic between the two of you, and where does that all tie in? Because I know it's going to come up later on, and I just kind of want to get that established right away.
Yeah, sure. The funny way that I got into game design was actually through my brother Adam. He got a job at Fantasy Flight Games after I did. I was writing for the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay tabletop RPG that Fantasy Flight was publishing. That was my first like paid writing gig in games, but that led to me getting a job in the marketing department as a copywriter. So that was like my career path at the time. And then a few months later, Adam got a job as I think his title was managing game producer, but he quickly climbed the ladder there because there were a lot of people that were like developers or designers that didn't want to take ownership of projects at FFG, and Adam really did want to.
Yeah.
So when the second edition became like a hot topic in the office, he was like the first to throw his name in the hat. So he quickly became like the lead designer for one of the biggest titles at FFG at the time. So he got a quick jump up, and I had to kind of play catch up because I was, in marketing, but I would always help out with other game design projects. And after a while, they were like, "Why is this guy in marketing? He's like designing all his games. So let's put him in R&D." So that's when Adam and I started kind of working together on games, but we didn't actually design a game until we left FFG. So our first game design together was the Warhammer Quest adventure card game. And yeah, since then it's pretty much been everything we've done. We've done like as co-designers. There's been a couple projects I've done on the side. Like I worked on the Rambo board game that I think it came out eventually, but it was had a troubled production thing. So
Yeah.
I've done a few like side projects by myself. But yeah, most of our main designs are co-designs by
Yeah. And
both of
some of
us.
the, I think some of the Fantasy Flight games, like even if you weren't working together, like you'll see both of your names on certain projects in different areas. I just wasn't sure how much you guys worked directly with each other throughout all of that. So I know now we have a little bit more of an idea of how that works between the two of you. Were you guys playing board games when you were kids?
Yeah, like I think what really stuck with us is because I always loved stuff like Clue, like all the basic board games. But like when we got Hero Quest, I think I was like probably 9 or 10, maybe. I got it for Christmas, and I didn't even ask for it, which is weird. It wasn't like something that I was thinking a lot about, but my mom, I think, saw me get excited about the commercial one time because they had a really cool commercial on TV. And that was before I even knew what the genre of fantasy was. I just knew like, oh, I like knights and I like swords and stuff, but
Yeah.
Hero Quest kind of taught me what like the fantasy genre was, and that really stuck with us. So like that was kind of our main game as kids. But it wasn't until we were like I think 16 or 17, like in our late teens, we were playing music, we were in metal bands and stuff. So we needed like some other outlet, and that's when we discovered Warhammer. That was
Okay.
like because we wanted to get expansions for Hero Quest. We played it so
Right.
much, but we were latecomers, and they were like already all out of print and stuff. So we're like, well, what's next, and we
Right.
were at the game store and we kind of like saw all the figures of Warhammer or the Warhammer fantasy battles figures, and we just kind of got sucked into that. So ever since then our gaming career has kind of been punctuated by Warhammer in different ways. We've always been kind of following along the Warhammer fantasy path.
Did you as kids like try to come up with your own games? Because a lot of game designers, I'll say, like I tried to design my own games with Legos or whatever, which is usually
Yeah,
my example. Did you and your brother be like, let's make a board game?
I've heard of a lot of other designers that was a big part of their childhood. Like one of my close friends, Corey Konieczka, he's a big FFG designer. That's like his childhood. He would like make a lot of games. He's always being creative. I think myself more like it didn't really come up a lot as a kid of me designing my own stuff. I did design my own quests in Hero Quest, but there was one time in middle school. I forget what spawned this, but I was doing like a Paul Revere project for history class, and I decided, hey, I'm going to make a board game, and I think it was because I had Risk,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
little, the little figures I had, like because I was obsessed with vehicles. Like I loved like Blaster Master, which you can see over
Oh,
here in
love
this
that game.
poster.
Love that game. Favorite, one of my
Yeah,
favorite NES games.
I was always obsessed with like the whole being in a vehicle and hopping out their little pilot. So I had the horses from Risk and the little infantrymen, and I wanted to make a game where like you were walking around and then you got upgrade, you got a horse, and so I made this little board game that was all about like going around. Just it was like a Monopoly game where you're just going on a path. We could like land on a certain area and get a horse. You change your figure out, and I thought it was so cool at the time.
Nice. Yeah, and we have had Corey Konieczka, and I'll probably bring him up a little bit
Oh,
later.
cool,
But
cool.
yeah, Corey's a great guy. Lots of stuff, and yeah, you guys have worked quite a bit together. So
Yeah, yeah.
um, how did gaming and writing and that kind of life affect as far as like school and friendships and just life as a kid? Did that stuff ever get in the way of things that were grown up important?
Yeah, I think like one of the main things that sticks out is video games were a big part of my childhood, like Nintendo, and
Yeah.
I was a big console gamer. And there were two very distinct things kind of in my upbringing that it's like good and bad. Like, I mean, I had a lot of situations where before saving games was easy, you'd be like, you'd be playing a game, and your parents were like, "Hey, we gotta go." And I'm like, "Hold on, I'm not at a save point yet." Caused a lot of conflict in the house because I was like that was always my priority was video games. But like I remember this is a funny story. It's like as an adult it really infuriates me, but like when I was a teenager I thought it was great. I was 18 and I was going to Ball State because I was kind of aimless and have I was playing drums for bands and I wanted to be a musician. I didn't want to like go to school,
Right.
so I was like I was undecided, no major decided. My first semester at Ball State, Grand Theft Auto 3 came out. I didn't have a
Oh.
system at the time, but like I had some money set aside for college in my brand new like checking account. And I decided one day I'm gonna just forget school. I'm just gonna go buy a PlayStation 2 and or whatever I think that was the system that was on at the time. But I bought GTA when it came out, and I just sat in my dorm and played that for like weeks at a time. Didn't go to class. Just kind of blew off school and ended up failing out of Ball State. And it was like at the time I was like thinking I think it was a way just to like kind of rebel about not wanting to go to school, not wanting
Right.
to just major and stuff. But I feel bad today because I wasted a lot of my parents' money at the time.
Very very similarly, I wanted to role play and play Magic the Gathering, so my
Yeah.
first stint in college, which was my passion,
Mhm.
kind of fell through because I was just like too tired to do anything because I stayed up all night gaming. So
Yeah, it gets in the
very
way.
simple. It's actually one of the reasons I asked that, because I'm like, there's always these pratfalls, these things that get in the
Mhm.
way of life. so that people that watch or listen to the show, they can go, oh, yeah, you can recoup from that. I can still be a board game designer. I can still be an author, even if
Yeah.
I failed my first stint. If I'm 20 years old and I screwed up, there's still
And
time. You still got a chance.
there's a good redemption arc too, because like this is how I nail job interviews, because the story always works. But I had like this comeback because I failed out of Ball State, spent a few years just working jobs. I worked like every job you can imagine. I've had like all these part-time jobs, and I was just a terrible employee because I would just get tired of doing something else and go apply for a different job and just doing whatever I wanted, playing drums and bands. But when I got into fantasy, like really hard, because I didn't get into like reading fantasy until I was like, 18, 19, maybe 20.
Right? Okay.
I hated books in school. I never wanted to read stuff. I didn't care about literature. But like as a late teen, early 20s, I got obsessed with fantasy books. George R. R. Martin, and started reading Stephen Erickson, Robert Jordan, all these fantasy authors. And I was working at the local college to me, Purdue University. I was a janitor, third shift, scrubbing toilets, cleaning up puke in bathrooms and everything, and
Yay.
and had like no direction outside of just being, a drummer in a band, wanting to start a power metal band, obsessed with fantasy metal, obsessed with books. And I saw this sign in this teacher's office I was cleaning out. It was like a list of majors for that year, and one of them was creative writing. And like I wasn't even much of a writer. I just like knew that I liked books, and I thought I could tell stories and everything. And I was like, you know what, I didn't have a major before, but I could take that seriously. I could be a creative writing major. So like I had really good discounted tuition being a full-time employee at Purdue.
Right.
So I would scrub toilets all night, go straight to class, early classes, go home, get a little bit of sleep, go to my part-time job at Culver's and make burgers for a while, then go straight back to my job and like just like, hustling really bad. And I ended up getting like all my GPA back up from failing out of Ball State within like like with one semester. And then I took like all summer courses and I graduated in 3 years. So,
Nice.
so it all panned out.
Was there anything from your time in college, your second stint in college, that you learned that still to this day stands out to you?
I mean, just like when the money's coming out of my pocket when I'm paying for my education, like it was so much easier to take it seriously because I was working for it.
Hmm.
And I think like just the actual learning aspect, like all of the creative writing courses, I don't know how useful they were for me because like at the time, like I was being forced into like literary, like the genre was like literary fiction, and I just did not like that because they kind of like push this like non-genre fiction, but like in my opinion, literary fiction is a genre. It's like it's kind of had its own genre. So I learned to test that. I hated it, but I played by the rules because I wanted to get good grades. So I wrote what I need. I wrote all the stories I needed to, but at the same time, I was working on Eva Corruption, when I could, my first novel, which took me like 5 years because I was going to college and
Right.
trying to learn how to write a book.
We're working
But
two jobs. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I think it's that like juggling all those different things while still being like passionate and on the creative side and keeping that going. When real life is, something you have to take seriously because you're paying for it yourself. So that was the thing I took the most from, I think, was just the logistical things, like the realistic stuff and being able to stay passionate even though you have all those other things to juggle at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. You're writing that first book because you're talking about you were in a band, but your first book is about a band. So how are you putting together the story for that and the crossover without too much crossover? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's like that was a very intentional thing ahead of time because when we started Lorengard, we had a few different paths to go down because like there are we were very inspired by European metal, and there's bands like Hammerfall that just sing about like really generic like metal, heavy metal. They throw some fantasy themes in there, but it's not like a cohesive thing. And then you
Right.
have bands that I really loved like Rhapsody, and they were like this symphonic operatic concept. Everything about the album was like telling this whole inclusive story, and I wanted to lean more that way, but kind of go even more so and like write the book and have like an actual established setting people could get into if they like the music. So it was much more in that regard, but also like I wanted to stand on its own too. It wasn't just supposed to be like a gimmick where it's like, hey, there's this book and it's kind of goofy. It's about I want it to be like a serious fantasy book, like something that Steven Erickson put out. People are just fans of because it's great fantasy. I wasn't that good of an author at the time, obviously, but but that was the goal. That was what we were trying to do. Um, but I think like the songwriting process, like being involved with the music, really that's what really gets me passionate about music, because I always tell this weird story that it's hard to articulate this because it's so specific. But one of my first like realizations about music being like more than just me hitting drums and being cool and spinning sticks and stuff. Like I was playing Metallica. Metallica's "The Thing That Should Not Be" off of Master of Puppets, and it's a very kind of just like abstract song. The lyrics are very kind of vague, but it's speaking about this like mysterious creature that should not be alive, that should not be exist in existence. And I was always fascinated, like what is this creature? Like I want to see it. I want to explore this more. And for some reason, that song just kind of like made me always like wonder. I just opened up this like constant wonder, and that opened the door for me like wanting to find more stuff like that. And that's what power metal did for me. Like when I found Hammerfall and Rhapsody, they really let me like kind of just explore that even more, because the music had so many layers beyond just like good hooks and good vocals and good drums. So like being part of the music creation process, I think really shaped how I approach being an author as well. And it's hard to define, hard to articulate, but if anybody else out there is a musician and also writes, they probably know what I'm talking about. But that's always been kind of like how I track back to like whenever I'm starting a writing project. It's like the same mindset. And I'm writing music for my buddies or
Yeah.
whatever.
You'd be surprised how many writers are also musicians, whether they're writers first, musician second, or the other way around. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
We've had a handful of them. So so it does happen. It does happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they do know. When you're none of them have written about the music though. They've never written from the point of view of like these characters are in a band,
Mhm.
right? So that is something that is a little bit different. So
Yeah,
I
it's
will
something too. Like when I started, that's like the Relic Myers story, which behind me, if anyone's watching the video, they'll see this poster, which is my heavy metal horror series. But that's pretty much what that was born from, is because I people always say write what you know, and it's like, well, I know what it's like being a kind of aimless teenage drummer that's obsessed with power metal, so
right.
let's just do that with some monsters.
Is there parallels between writing a book and the music itself? So like you have your album, you come up with a song, and it's like, do you put that in your book or do you just make up different stuff? Are they the same?
Yeah, the with Lorne Yard specifically, and this is always like the easiest way to kind of talk about this, because that was my process, and it wasn't like pre-planned. It was more just kind of like figure this out, because honestly, at the time, I know it's been done before, it's been done since. There's been like Coheed and Cambria has done like graphic novels with their music, but
Right.
when we were doing Lorne Guard, it was like I'd never heard of anybody who'd like written a concept album and then written the book with it. It's usually like, oh, a concept album is based on a book or based on a published work already. So creating both at the same time was a bit tricky, and I didn't really know. I couldn't like ask for advice about like what's the best way to do this. But the way we approached it was like, I found out since I'm not a plotter when it comes to like writing. I like to just write. I just like to stream of consciousness, just start writing, and just see where it goes. Let the story take me. That works the best for me.
Okay.
But with Lauren Guard, I had to plot a lot. I had to like kind of plan out what this structure was going to be. And looking at it by albums and broken up into songs was interesting, because it was almost mathed out, where it's like, okay, we have a 10-track album, and I want to
Right.
write like maybe a 30-chapter book. So it's like, where do I filter all these things in, and like where does so like most of the storytelling for the Lauren Guard album was I was like track listing. I was like, well, this
Right.
song is going to be at this part. So it's not really like act one, act two, act three. It was more like, this is track one has got to be like an overture style track, kind of like, anthematic over telling of what the story is going to be. And so like it was very experimental. Like it was kind of just, let's see what works.
Yeah.
Luckily, um, you always look back at your own work. Sometimes kind of like your first work, you're not like super proud of sometimes, but like Eva Corruption's not my best book, but it's cool. But Eva Corruption is an incredible album. It's like to this day, I go back and listen to it. It's like even if I'm not drumming on it, I know like I know all the songs by heart, obviously, but I can still feel like I come into it like with an open mind, saying, "Man, this is just some good heavy metal." It's like
Yeah.
really catchy, and so like I think it holds up a lot. So it worked very well, I think, for the music side of things. It helped because our primary songwriter Chris Cruz, who plays guitar for Lauren Guard, is just he's he is a paragon. He's amazing. I've never met a musician like him. And he still does amazing work to this day. He's still busy playing in bands, but yeah, I like, this is a long answer, but yeah, like that particular project, I think was more geared toward the music side. Like, I think it supported the music output. The book was more just like, how can I make this work? How can this tell
Yeah,
the story?
yeah, sure. When you got that first book published, what was the process for you to get the publishing done? Because some people are like, well, I'll shop it around to 100,000 different people, get declined maybe 9,900,000 times. Or some people are like, well, I just threw it on Amazon and it did well. Or, self publish and actually like going through and trying to push it out. What was kind of your process to get that first book actually published?
I think I always wanted to avoid the literary agent step. That's like the primary step. It's like
Mm-hmm.
shop it out to an agent and then go to publishers after that. And it's like part of it's like, maybe some self-consciousness. I don't think I'm good enough to find an agent that's going to like support me. So I'm just
Right.
going to do it myself. And early on, that was kind of my approach because I was so sure that we weren't going to be stopped. Like, I'm not going to like wait for somebody to know what we're doing. Like, I don't want to wait to find a literary agent who can like see what we want to do. Well, let's just do it ourselves, because the music was coming together and it was ready to go. And I was like, I want to put both these out at the same time. And it's ironic because we ended up getting signed after we released our album. We signed with Candlelight Records out of California. They only did a small print run of Eva Corruption. And that was when the band was kind of taking a break, taking a step back anyway from touring and everything. But and then like we did a Kickstarter to do like a bigger print run of the book. So like I did go, not this was like before Amazon had a really good
Right.
self-publishing tool. I used I think it was like Book Baby was the
Okay.
platform we used. But yeah, we did like a small print on demand one, and then we did like a small print run through Kickstarter. We kickstarted the like the mass market paperback of the book.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we printed like 1,000 copies and we were going to sell them all at shows. But right when we got the print run, that's when we kind of stopped playing shows. So like I was sitting on like 800 copies of the book, and I still have copies now in my basement. I've taken to author shows and like, yeah, here's my first novel. It's only $5 now.
Yeah. There you go. Nice. When you're looking at the evolution of that and then comparing it to the board games, were they kind of parallel? Did they happen kind of at the same time? You're working on a book, you're working on a game, you're working on a book, you're working on a game.
This, yeah, like jump ahead now to like the Malice Light adventures. So this game idea came about when I was working on the third book for the series. So I have always written. It's funny because the Acrid Sky, which came out, I think it was 2023. I actually started that like back in 2019. Like, I wrote like the prologue. That's all. I had a concept for the story, and I wrote the prologue, and then it kind of sat on a shelf for a few years before the pandemic hit. And I was like, I need to do something, and that's when I started writing series again, writing books again. But yeah, like I always had the concept where I wanted to write a story that was that was an ideal setting, because like I love, people call it generic fantasy, but like I think that's kind of ironically a generic term for just kind of like a catch-all fantasy that uses a lot of tropes, like D&D tropes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I like a lot of those tropes,
Me
but like
too.
I like when they're done, done with some earnesty, like see like very is that a word, earnesty?
Ernest with Ernest.
Yeah, it's whatever the like. I take it and I do it like um I take it seriously. But a lot of people will kind of like frown on that. They're like, oh, it's just generic fantasy, because like if you use art that kind of just conveys a typical like D&D book or something, sometimes people are like, oh, that's just generic fantasy. But that's what I've always liked. I wanted to make a fantasy series that lended itself well to games, RPGs, board games that would have a plethora of characters to choose from and everything. So that book has always been kind of geared toward a setting for games. But when we did the Mouse Light Adventures, which started designing last year in the fall, Adam and I very specifically wanted it to capture themes from all three of the books. So like a lot of our ideas have been lingering for like a few years since I started the books. And initially, when I started the Acrid Sky, it was for a different game. It was for like a tabletop miniature skirmish game, which we still plan on doing sometime. But we have a lot of plans within this setting. But it's a lot more open with this particular IP, and it's because when I started writing it, I wanted it to be something to be really easy for us to just socket games into.
Yeah. So going back to your time at Fantasy Flight, because there's a ton of games you worked on, right?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
talked obviously you talked about Warhammer stuff. I think wasn't there like some Star Wars tie-in games that you had worked with or worked on as well?
Yeah, the big one was X-Wing when I was
X-wing,
still there. That's when Adam and I we kind of started working on projects together. We were
yeah,
both working as developers on that one.
yeah,
We also like worked as developers and playtesters on the Gears of War game that Corey did, which is
right,
like one of my favorite designs of his. I love that game.
yeah. So many different games, but you mentioned going from freelancing to marketing to R&D. What was that like, and what kind of a time span was that for you to jump around all those roles? Was it like we're doing this and then I'm doing this and then I'm doing this, or was it like 1 year I'm doing this for a year and a half, and then it slowly transitions over? What does that look like as far as logistically?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I was at FFG, it was still a small operation. I mean, they had a good number of employees, but the marketing team was like two or three writers, and like a few graphic designers. And at the time, I did not want to be in marketing. Like I remember vividly, like here's a tip for anyone looking for jobs. I know the job market sucks right now, but it was bad when I was looking for jobs too. But I had a job interview and I made the mistake of telling the guy interviewing me that I wanted to get my foot in the door. Like I made it sound like I wanted to be a game designer. It's just a good way to get my foot in the door. You don't want to say that because you're getting an interview to be a marketing person. You got to like say I want to be a marketing person. So I botched my first interview, but luckily I got a call back. I guess I did something right because they had another opening and they called me back and I apologized saying, yeah, I misspoke. I want to do this job. And so I ended up getting the job, but I only worked in the marketing department for about a year. And then had been doing a bunch of like promo stuff. Like an example is I mentioned before, I wrote for the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay line, and we had some like promotional scenarios to do for some Warhammer event that we had going on at the event center. So I took it upon myself to actually like manage that project and like write the scenario, like write the encounters and everything.
Right.
I did that several times for other games, and eventually they were like, "Well, this guy is doing a lot of game design. Let's just put him in R&D." So after a year in marketing, I was moved over to be a creative content developer on the R&D side. My first project was actually working on an expansion for Adam's second edition design, which was just going to print. So like
Okay.
they worked so far ahead, they
Yeah.
need to like start the expansion before the base game's even out there.
Right. For sure. When you're working on R&D, do you in that genre of R&D, are you like coming up with, besides what you explained, like, hey, I've got this idea for a game, let's see if it works, or is that somebody else? Is that a different section of the department where somebody's creating a new game from scratch?
It can happen. Like it a lot of times internally they don't take a lot of pitches, but they'll do like when I left because I was only there for after I switched over to R&D, I was only there for like another year, and then I got another job in the corporate travel industry of all things. That's when I started freelancing game design. But they had like these when I left, I heard they started having these internal pitch days like once a year or something where they would like invite everybody to bring their games in and show them off. But when I was there, they had such a thick, heavy schedule of like licensed stuff that like there was no real place to put any pitched games. So it was more
Right.
just like finding people to be up to take ownership of certain projects. It's like, oh, someone's got to help finish the X-wing scenarios. Who's going to help finish the Descent expansion? Who's going to start the Mansions of Madness expansion? So like it was more just divvying up all the like projects that were waiting for somebody to work on them.
Yeah. Was there anybody that kind of took you under the wing? I know you mentioned Corey Konieczka. We've had a handful of Fantasy Flight people on the show. Was there anybody else who kind of took you under their wing when you came in to help you out, or was it just like, I know all the things, I don't need any help?
Yeah, I think Corey would deny being like a mentor to me, but like I would call him a mentor because like I mean he was a buddy, so it's kind of like it's not like I would go there and like, hey, teach me sensei, but like
Right.
he was very open and I would just kind of show him things I was working on. He'd like give me some feedback and everything. And like I admired his stuff. I admired his work, so it was easy to kind of like learn from things he was doing. Other than that though, it's like it was kind of a they expect you to be a little proactive and find your way. And that's why I think a lot of people struggle in games because there isn't a ton of guidance. It's more like you're expected to know what needs done. You're expected to know all the steps involved and ask questions if you need to. But in a lot of other like industries that are more regulated and like more structured, you'll have like the proper orientation and all this stuff. But yeah, at the time with that company, it was more just like if you understand how these projects are made, you're gonna excel. If not, hope good luck, you know.
Right, right. Well, there's so many different mechanics in games, right? Like, oh, this is a dice game. This is a worker placement game. This is a Euro game, right? And there's all these different terms. How do you separate and understand the mechanics of all the different types of games, the different kinds of mechanics within games? If you just come in and you're just like, I have these cool ideas for games, but I don't. What are all these terms?
Right, right, yeah. It's tough too because like again, that's one reason I might have had an advantage because aside from just like being a gamer, like I played a lot of games, but
Right,
I would all constantly dissect games, not from like a mechanical standpoint, because I had this weird preconceived notion before I started designing games that like it was more of like an engineer's role, like a very smart engineering person could like figure out the vision of what a game is before they even start working on it. But I found out quickly, like most designers, not everybody, most designers, like me, for example, it's just about getting something onto the table and breaking it immediately and then, reconfiguring it and trying again. It's just like a lot of trial and error and like not being afraid to just put something down and try it, like mock something up, whatever it is, see if it functions how you want it to, and like constantly iterate it from there. So it's like there's probably an approach to do it where it's more of a mathematical or like an engineering practice, but it was never that way for me. When I started decided to design games, it would just be taking functions that I know that I've played on the table and making them work within other systems and piling things on and then stripping them away if they don't work. It's just a lot of trial and error, really. It's what it comes down to.
yeah. What's the dynamic between you and your brother when you're coming up with a game or working together on a board game? Is because there's got to be a dynamic, right? And is it different than a dynamic than working with, say, a Corey Konieczka or somebody else in general because it's your brother, or in this case, like you aren't you guys twins? You guys are twins, right?
We're twins, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're twins.
In this case, being twins and having that dynamic, there's got to be something a little bit extra to that than just working with another game designer, right?
Yeah, it's like with most of the projects we've done, and I like I'm always careful how I word this, but I'm sure Adam agrees because I've heard him talk about it as well, like how he describes it. Like I think he views himself much more as a project manager. Like that's what he does. His day job is a project manager nowadays. Like he's been in a lot of roles. He's been a proposal writer like me. He's been in app development. He's been a coder, and like more recently, he's just been taking a full time role as a project manager. And that's kind of what he does with games too, where like if we have a game we want to do, we'll both just kind of spitball ideas about what we think it's going to be, and
Right.
we both are familiar enough with the industry and the products out there that we know like how to like use shorthand, and we speak the same language in that regard. But like when it comes to actually like designing a game, like it comes down to me usually putting together several crappy prototypes and him saying, nope, 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 that works. We'll do that one. Like so he'll just kind of sift through. And I don't mind doing the work because I'm typically like a very I'm very hard to I have a hard time relaxing. Like I don't really like unwind very easily. So I'm always like wanting to like create something. And if I'm not writing a book, I'm usually tinkering with something that's going to be a game or playing drums or something. I have a really hard time relaxing, and Adam will tell you he's very good at relaxing. He's very good at just like unwinding and being lazy, and so we work well in that regard. I don't mind doing a lot of like the kind of the busy work, and like the crunch work, but he's got a good vision, and he's usually better at articulating what needs to be done, and also just staying on task, like just hey, get this thing done, and I'll go do it.
Okay. Do you guys usually agree on a lot of stuff or disagree on things a lot on them? And
we
how do you guys manage conflict? Because you don't want to be like, damn it, mom, he doesn't like the rules at the Thanksgiving table, something like that.
That's like it's funny because we kind of like we disagree about the same agreements and then we agree on the same disagreements. Like I think we like to go back and forth and just double talk about a lot of the stuff that we already agree on or already established. And it's just kind of the way we kind of work through stuff. Like it just like a lot of identical twins will have like twin talk. They'll have like their own language, and
Yeah.
we kind of did growing up where we would just jibber jabber at each other, but we knew what we were saying. And a lot of twins will like grow up and maintain that in some form. And we kind of have that in complaining, like we'll just complain to each other and like bicker about stuff. but at the same time, it's kind of getting stuff done. And it's
Okay.
funny. I've had like, like when I first started dating my wife, she'd be like, "You guys are nasty." I'm like, we're just talking. Like we're just, that's how we're talking to each other. And it sounds like we're disagreeing or bickering. It's like it's like you see any groups and like group dynamics where they have a lot of the same shared interests, but they'll bicker about things. Like you see like video game fans online, they'll like argue about the same thing that they all love. They all love this thing, but they argue
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing with us. We'll just like we'll over talk about certain things, but in the long run, we have a very shared vision of what we think is fun or cool for products. So the end result usually speaks for itself,
Fair enough. Fair enough. When you're putting together a game, such as this new one you have coming out, you're pairing it up with music, you're pairing it up with a book, you're pairing it up with whatever. Is there other facets that you'd like to utilize when designing a game, other media that you'd like to pull in the future?
I the like I'm not sure if this answers the question specifically, but I think like the one thing that always frustrates me that I wish I would have kept up at when I was younger, I was super into art. Like I was like a decent comic book artist. I would sketch a lot. I never got good at coloring and stuff, but I really wish I would have kept up with art because that's always the bottleneck. Everything I want to do requires such awesome art, and I
Right.
have to like hire these artists to do this. And I would never like, publish stuff with AI art, but like I'm jealous because like that's like the one thing that's always missing because like I like to visualize these things and it's art is such a tough thing because I can't do it. It's expensive and it's like it stalls out everything I want to do. Like I want to if I want to release more than a couple books a year, I got to have art and it's expensive because I refuse to do like just a graphic design cover. I need to have like flashy art because I just love illustrations. So if I could do art, I think it would like enable me to do more projects, like more maybe just like get more of my vision across how I want it. Because I think sometimes I make concessions when it comes to art because it's hard to find like really consistent artists to work with. Usually I have to kind of choose new artists for each project because they're always busy doing other things. They're
Yeah.
just a lot of artists being pulled in separate directions. But that's the one thing that like I wish I could utilize more of. And I kind of just wish I could do it myself because like I always have a vision. I always know what I want. I just can't always articulate it. Art direction is not my thing. I'm not good at art direction. I can write a 150 word novel, 150,000 word novel, but I can't like do a good art description effectively because I just can't get my pictures out of my head.
Right. Right. When you're putting together a story, do you know you said you were kind of a pantser, right? But do you still have an idea of where you're going at this point?
Usually, yes. Usually an end is in sight, like there's some sort of end goal. It can change drastically, but like it'll still have some of its skin that I wanted in there. Almost every book I've ever written has ended loosely in the way that I wanted it to, but it still is almost unrecognizable to me seeing it in a final form because like it changed so much because the path of getting there, so many different elements came in and I wasn't expecting and it's like these characters that you write, they just take on a mind of their own. Like you have these things you instill in them, like you have personality quirks and traits and parts of yourself. But when you're writing and let them do the work, let them do the dialogue and everything, they take you in weird directions. I don't ever want to like kind of it's like being a DM, like you don't want to
Right.
force the players too much in one direction. You want to see what happens, see what the magic happens. So I do plan for an ending, but it usually is going to be it's going to be pretty unique to um like I guess because it's hard to say because like endings are the hardest thing for me. Like when like I recently had the Smoldering Vein, which is book 3, and the Malice Light, which is on the Kickstarter project right now. That one was probably the hardest book I've ever had to end because it's part of a series. So like having an end goal in sight for like book 6 makes it so it's like kind of hard to end books 2 and 3, because like you don't know exactly if like that's the right beat you want to shift the end on, and
Right.
that's the hardest part I think is the series. Like because I've only written a couple, like I've only written like 2 or 3 standalone novels. Usually I'm writing a series, and I've yet to finish a series. So like the Relic Miner series will be the first up because it's a 4-book series. I'm working on book 3 right now. But yeah, I guess ask me in a few years when I finished a series and if it panned out how I wanted it to.
I was
But yeah,
actually
each
just going to ask
individual
you.
book usually.
I was actually going to ask you, do you plan to finish off the series is coming up down the road
Yeah,
here, and
yeah.
if you have a timeline in sight for the audience and your fans.
Yeah, I'm aiming. I've kept on my track so far, but I'm aiming for a book a year for each series. So I published The Acrid Sky in 2023. So I did one book in 2023, and then 2024 I did The Withered Roots, and then Relic Myers and the Rhythms of Ruin. That was a new series I decided
Mhm.
to start randomly. So that was two books in 2024, and then 2025 came around. And I did five books. So so I've progressively like been doing more and more books per year, but now that I'm
Right.
throwing games back on the docket, I think I'm gonna have to like probably just keep myself limited to just the Relic Myers and the Malice Light, just to keep on the one book a year. So I'll be doing two books total a year, but one for each series for the next
Okay.
few years until I finish them off.
So Malice of Light Adventures is Acrid Sky, Smoldering Vein, and the
With the roots.
with the Roots.
Yep.
For those that are wondering, that is where we look at this new game that's on Kickstarter right now, which
Mhm.
is the Malice of Light Adventures. Tell us about the game. What kind of a game is it? What can we look for people that are listening before going to the Kickstarter and watching the really cool video you have? What can you tell us about the game?
Sure. Yeah. The best way to describe it, I think, is it's a co-op roguelike boss battler. And when I say co-op, it's like solo co-op. So it's like you can play as one hero with no special rules, or you can play up to four cooperatively, or you can just control four yourself if you want to. So it's very solo friendly. Also great for co-op. This game it's like our 14th game Adam and I've designed, like core system. We've done a lot of products outside of that, but I think this is the representation of like the last 16 years of our game design, like uh learnings essentially kind of wrapped up into a package. So it's a very consolidated box. Like usually if you kickstart a game, you get like 10 boxes of stuff. This is just
Right.
one box. It's all inclusive. Everything's in there. We wanted to keep it a tight package, nice storage in there, like all the minis and everything fit really nice. But yeah, it's a very modular game. So if anybody's familiar with our designs, like Street Masters, Alter Quest, Brook City, Hour of Need. We do a lot of like modular designs where it's not like structured scenarios where like, oh, you play through quest one, quest two. It's more like, oh, we want to fight this boss at this stage. I want to be this hero and have these minions. So you socket all these things together to make kind of your ideal scenario, or you can just do them all randomly and mix them up. And that's kind of where the roguelike aspect comes in, because we started designing this game. Adam and I took a long break from designing games. We took like almost 3 or 4 years off just completely from designing board games. But we were playing a lot of this video game called Raven's Watch, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. If you haven't played it, it's great. It's really, really fun action RPG, a roguelike. But we were playing that a lot, and we just kept talking about how much we wanted to capture that roguelike experience in a tabletop game. Because there are some that have tried it. Sometimes it comes off as a little tedious though, because because roguelikes are all about like, the loop is kind of cycling over. Like you die, you start over, you get a bunch of stuff and you lose it all and you start over. We wanted to capture that, but not have like the tedium of cycling over all the time, because board games in and of themselves are roguelikes. You set them up, you put
Right.
them away, you get them back out. So it's leaning a lot into that, where it's like one session, all inclusive. You're playing 3 acts over one session, and the third act is a big boss fight. So you get that like progression within a small time frame. You get that satisfying boss fight, and if you fail, you're like, we lost. We'll try again. I'll try a different build next time and see what happens. So
How does it tie into the books? Like, how did you make sure that like somebody who reads the books plays this game and goes, "This is definitely the books," or somebody who plays the game goes, "Oh, I really need to read the books."
mhm. So the game is not retelling the story. That's something that's very intentional, because what I don't love about licensed games is I don't love just replaying the same story, playing through the beats. There is an appeal to that, obviously. So, like, for example, if you play a mass market game like the Princess Bride adventure game, which is a fun
Right.
game,
Right.
you're playing through those really iconic story beats, and that's important because that's the whole identity. The Malice of Light, though, it's a big sprawling hexology. It's 6 books, and they get beefier each time. They're just expanding. So the world's big. It's got a lot of characters. It's like a big the pitch I wanted to go with was kind of like Game of Thrones, if it was a D&D campaign, you know, like I wanted to have a D&D party, adventures, but have that scope of like Game of Thrones where there's all these different characters across all these different kingdoms. So the characters, one thing, you'll see the characters, those are going to tell you who you know who these heroes are. If you read the books, you'll know their backstories. But every encounter that you play is like a story beat. So it's pulled from a certain narrative thread, but it's not retelling that story. So like you'll have um, I'll take an example here. So one of the encounters is the Hollywood Ravine. There's a lot of rumors about this location, the Hollywood, because apparently there was this like rift in there, and like the Nether cracked open and a bunch of demons came out. So the encounter you play at is at that rift. You don't see that in the books. You just hear the rumors, but the game lets you play there and see that rift. And there's all these references to because in the Wither Roots book two, the characters are kind of around the borders of the Hollywood, so you kind of like get the mystery of what's in
Yeah.
there. So this lets you play in there. So it's got a lot of those narrative threads where there's like you're getting to like play out the background stuff in the story, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's super cool. It's a cool, unique way of doing it too, because a lot of times you see have been board games that are based off books, and you're like, yeah, I mean, yes, but no.
Yeah,
It's almost like
it's
they
like
just painted on the
yeah,
colors of the book and said that that's it, right? So
yeah.
so
It's like a double-edged sword because like I mentioned before, the example I use is a great example because I that same company made a Lord of the Rings one too, and it was great because you're playing through those like big iconic moments in Lord of the Rings, and I love that. But at the same time, I would also love a game like that where I'm like protecting the Shire from a bunch of ravenous goblins that are attacking, or it's something different. You know,
yeah,
like it's still in that world, it's still capturing a lot of those cool moments, but it's playing something totally new, totally unique. So we kind of wanted to kind of try to do the best of both worlds because the bosses in this game are very iconic characters too, and their layers, their encounters are kind of like moments from the story. So like you'll get to it's kind of like a what if thing. Like
yeah,
what if Aniko was at this battle, and what if Ransel actually came to this battle? And so you get to like mix and you get it's like a playground, like sandbox of the setting. So
yeah. Nice. So my next question about the setting and the board game, because we've had some conversations already. We've talked about video games. We've talked about tabletop role playing. Is there a chance of seeing either of those also in this world?
for sure, yeah. So we have some big plans with Twin Tail Studios. We're starting slow, like this campaign. If you look at the Kickstarter, it's very concise. There's not a ton of stretch goals. We're not doing like a bunch of crazy stuff. We just want to make a very concise package, get it delivered fast, and make everybody, like show everybody how Twin Tail Studios operates, what we can produce. From there, we have a lot of plans because we do have an idea for a solo co-op RPG system, which is getting kind of popular now. Like that whole like solo
Yeah,
journaling. There's a lot of
yeah,
RPGs like
yeah.
that. We want to take that a step above and do like a kind of solo co-op tactical game. So it's got miniatures as well and some combat. So it takes a lot of what we learn because we do a lot of co-op combat games. Adam and I have a lot under our belt when it comes to designing AI systems for like enemies that are very fluid, just easy to not a lot of bookkeeping. We want to take all that what we learned in that and bring it to like an RPG setting with a little more player agency to like create your own stories without the GM having to plan everything for you,
Right.
and leaning on this setting that we'll have all the books for, obviously, and hopefully even more like maybe world guides and stuff like that.
Awesome. That's super cool. People that are listening, that Kickstarter is at 620 backers. They are only 2,000 away from their goal.
So
And you
close.
still have half a month left to go on that. But this is kind of the slow time in the Kickstarter. So you want to
Mhm.
you want to get in there right away. Don't put it off. Don't wait till the last minute. Get in there right away, because that's
Yeah,
that this is the time that is crucial to try and get past that marker. But
yeah.
if just a handful of people get in there and jump on that Kickstarter, it will be 100% funded. So get in on that right away. Hopefully I'm assuming you're excited for this game to come out, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. This is something like I said before. I think it's the best game Adam and I have designed. We're like so stoked for this thing, and we have a lot of plans for expansions because the beautiful part about this game is we designed it in a way where it's extremely modular. So like we can design new systems to kind of overlay on top of this core system, because the game itself, it's very easy to learn. It plays really fast. Like you can play a three act encounter, 4 player, probably under 2 hours. Like
Okay.
it's a very
Nice.
elegant. If you know the rules, you can just fly through it if you want. But yeah, we have ways to like, we want to, because a lot of roguelikes will have things where you'll have a base of operations and you can upgrade and do all this
Right.
cool stuff. So we want to bring all that stuff into this game line eventually. But then, for one step at a time, we'll take it slow. But if this thing funds well, and like you mentioned, like we're close right now. If all of our backers added on a dice pack, which you should add some dice packs because you can never have too many dice, we'd probably be over the funding goal right now. And then the better this funds, the faster it can be delivered, and the more like the faster we can get to the next project. So we're pretty stoked, and it's been a great first week of this thing. We're pretty excited.
That's great. If this successfully gets finished on Kickstarter, is there a plan for retail?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, the better it funds, like right. That's why we don't have any stretch goals. We did like a minimum print run, but the more funds we can get, even if we overfund, that'll make it so we can have a better retail presence, and we'll also be able to like sell directly on our website. We'll have more for like Gen Con, all these, because we're going to conventions this summer as well. So so once this funds, we have, and localization as well. So if you're not an English game player, you can like get this in Spanish. Hopefully all these different markets as long as this funds. So the more money we get this to show other people, the more we can get on board, and it just opens a lot more doors.
Awesome. I look forward to it. 100% hope it funds. All of our listeners, go jump in on that Kickstarter. You mentioned Gen Con. What Gen Con? You got Gen Con coming up. What are some other events that you got coming up down the road
Yeah,
that people can find you at?
so I have some author events, like actually this weekend. I'm not sure if anybody's local to the Indianapolis area. I'll be in the Noblesville. That's where I'm from, right? I'm in Noblesville. There's a local author fair this weekend. There's also up in Lafayette, which is my hometown. I'll be at an author fair there as well at the library. But yeah, as far as Twin Tail Studios, we'll have presence at Origins this year. We'll have a booth. We'll probably won't have the game because if assuming we fund okay, we can't print it that fast. But
Right.
we'll have books, and we'll have like probably some demo copies to play, so go check out the game in person. And then Gen Con will, there's a high likelihood if we get this funded well enough, we could probably fast track it and have it to sell at Gen Con as well. But I'll be in the author's avenue with the books and everything as well too. So you can just come get some books signed, pick up some novels, and if we have the game, grab one of those as well. So
Awesome. There we go. You can go and find out all the things Brady Sadler's doing at all those events. Get your book signed, get your game signed, and all that stuff. So people can find you at bradyjsadler.com. Again, guys, Brady J Sadler. We talked about that. .com. Go and check that out. All the social medias are on there. You can find the Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff. But you're also on Blue Sky, so that might not be on the website, but you can find him on Blue Sky as well. And twintailstudios.com. You can find all things Twin Tail Studios over there. And of course, you can catch Lauren Guard on YouTube and go and check out their albums on Amazon and whatnot. So go and get all those. I know because I looked. I went and added them to some lists. Go and check all that stuff out, guys. Stick around for the Q&A in just a few short minutes. You and your questions right here in the live stream chat will get read, and we'll chat about them and ask some questions. So make sure to get your questions in the chat. But first, coming soon to Epic Realms. Ben Harkins is a well-known board game designer as well. And he's also the owner of Floodgate Games, producing games such as Sagrada and Epic Resort. Ben is going to be joining us live April 27th, and that's going to hit podcast feeds on April 28th. Also coming up, a friend of the show, third-time visitor of the show, author Chris Jackson is going to be making his third appearance. He's going to be coming on to talk about his new Pathfinder novel. Of course, you guys know he did a lot of Pathfinder tales, and he returns to the world of Galarian with his new novel. He's going to talk with us about that. Comic book icon Tim Seeley's done Nightwing, X-Men, all of that stuff. DC, Marvel, etc., etc. Tim Seeley is going to be joining us coming up down the road as well. So make sure to follow, rate, subscribe, review. Go and check us out on YouTube. Join, click all of the buttons. It helps us, and in turn, helps our guests. So, for Brady J Sadler, I am Nick, and I want to thank you all for listening to Epic Realms.